Hello guys, welcome to this second video of the week number 10. So we're going to start discussing over here about these different periods that we are going to check that are basically, let's say, three. From 0 to 36, we sort of experience this division, okay? So let's go to the slide number 49, and we are going to see this early vocalization period that goes from 0 to 7 months, more or less. Okay, I always was until some years ago really annoyed when moms especially said like, oh, my kid is 12 months, my kid is 36 months, my kid is 18 months. Well, come on, he's already a year old. Say that he's a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, right? Later on, I started studying about these different things, and I realized how important it is for somehow infants recognize the difference between the progresses of certain months, right? Also, doctors such as pediatricians and some other things, they usually analyze important factors such as growth, dentition, certain diseases, vaccines, all of these in terms of months, right? So do not give too much hell to moms when they say 18 months or 20 months or 24 months, okay? Very well. So as I mentioned before, we are going to find here some phenomena, if we can call it that way, or manifestations of language that are basically three: vegetative sounds, comfort sounds, and vocal play. Okay, as I mentioned before, they are not consecutive. You don't need like to find first one and then the other and then the next. No, they may happen simultaneously. Two of them may happen. The third may happen first. The second may happen last, or something like that. So take that into account. Let's discuss this a little bit, each one of them. So, vegetative sounds. So when a person is unfortunately in coma, for example, is it called that he is in vegetative state? Yes. And why is that? Because usually he or she is only able to produce these sounds, yes, or these reactions that are many times involuntary in that coma condition, right? Now, in kids, so she sort of returns to this stage of very basic language development, right? So in vegetative sounds, we have burping, swallowing, sucking, or spitting noises, right? Of course, burping has to do with the gas that is the kid trying to expel after eating or something similar. Let's say that is more of a physiological reaction, but sometimes kids can burp as well as a manifestation of language. Swallowing, sorry, that it's like the sound that you produce when you eat somehow, when you pass your saliva. Sucking, that of course it has to do with feeding, because when they are drinking milk from the breast of their moms, when they are feeding, that it's something that they produce. And spitting, sort of playing with their saliva. It is very important to notice over here that different kids may assign different meanings. I think that saying meanings will be like too complicated, like to complete an overstatement, but we're going to call it, for the purpose of the explanation, meanings. They may assign different meanings for each one of these sounds, yes? Let's say that our logic tell us that probably when they burp is because they are sort of satisfied with their food. When they are swallowing, it may indicate that they want to be fed. When they are sucking, maybe it's either because they are in the process of somehow sucking, or the process of somehow eating or being fed, or wanting to be fed, or somehow remember, or making an imaginary reproduction of feeding, and speeding maybe because they don't like something or something like that. That is what our adult logic may indicate, right? But remember that they do not think rationally in the way that we do. Hopefully we all think rationally, but there's a lot of instinct in there, a lot of repetition, a lot of let's say non-elaborate thinking, right? So actually they could produce all these different sounds in different circumstances only by repetition, only because they can. Yes, because it's a way sort of to make use of their vocal apparatus. But either they may mean anything or they mean nothing. Yes, it is just let's say a way to have an early vocalization exercise that will eventually be somehow good or adequate or necessary for some other things. Okay. Then we have the comfort sounds. Yes, that has to do with the cooing or the gooing. Yes, and it's these let's say long sounds that infants can produce. Yes, they may be well, when I say long, it may last a couple of seconds, or it may be a single utterance, and normally they are let's say sounds that sort of replicate the K, the G, and the P, something like that, right? Of course, it sounds much better in a kid, and sounds cuter, not me like I am sort of something stuck in my throat. But they can do it in that way. Yes, they can be replication of these senseless somehow or not necessarily let's say consciously thought sounds that mothers or caregivers can the sounds that they can produce in order to make the kid sleep or to comfort him if he's crying or something like that. Yes, think about it. I perfectly remember the sounds that my mother used to do for sleeping the kids. Yes, I am the brother of two sisters, and I am the eldest guy, and I took care of especially my younger sister, right? And I took her to sleep and sort of carry her around and change her diaper and stuff. And I remember very well that when my mother wanted to make her sleep, she made this sound. It was it was like a song, if you want to call it that way, and it's not really a replication of any known song. It was just this sound that she sort of invented, she made out, and she cooed my sister to sleep. I learned it, and somehow when I had to take care of her as well, I did it in the same way, and it was pretty effective because there was a relationship between what she did, what she perceived and what my mother did. And sometimes my little sister as a baby, she tried to replicate that. Of course, it didn't sound at all as we sung, right? That the predominant sound was the M, right? So I could notice, and I perfectly remember, I have a good memory about that, that she sort of made these going or cooing sounds trying to start with the M, something like that, right? Sometimes she sung herself to sleep, right? This was later on, right? But some months later. But my point over here is that this was introduced at that time when she was really young, 0 to 7 months, and those can be these comfort sounds. So normally these sounds are produced by the mother, by the caregiver during the moment in which a kid is crying or wants to sleep, or maybe feels scared after a noise or something like that, and they can be replicated. And then we have the laughing, maybe smiles, but mostly it's laughing because let's say that in this case they are more conscious about sound than sight. Yes, let's say in this very early period. So they tend to replicate the laughing, right? So it's pretty common that people get closer to the baby and start doing all these different sounds, speaking, in a terrible version of Spanish, etc., or well, whatever language. And one of very important or very common behaviors is the laughing, right? So the kid is very likely to replicate that. Yes, and sometimes again we feel really proud and saying, "Oh, the baby loves me. He was laughing with me, and I'm such a likable guy or girl." Well, maybe you are, but most likely it is that he's just imitating the thing. Yes, and he's imitating your facial gestures, and he sort of finds the sound of laughter attractive, and that gives him pleasures at some point, so he replicates it. So next time a baby is laughing with you, probably he's not laughing, he's just looking at the mirror, and your face is the mirror, and he's trying to imitate you, or he thinks that is the point. Okay. And finally we have vocal play. Take into account that the vegetative sounds and the comfort sounds, the first one seems to be more let's say physiological, related to feeding, to crying, to digestion, right? The comfort sounds are more like random noises, if we want to call them in that way. But the vocal play is the production of speech-like sounds. Yes. So normally, and especially on this side of the earth, we can say that anything that is speech-like is something that has vowels before consonants. Yes, most of the other ones are just noises, utterances, and things like that that are closer to not complete, let's say, syllables. But in this case, we have the possibility of having this vocal play. These sounds doesn't necessarily need to be closer in meaning or pronunciation to any word. It is just the fact that the infant be able to produce sounds that starts with vowels and have some sort of consonant in between. Okay. Normally, this vocal play is the last thing to develop after we have vegetative sounds and comfort sounds, because they are much more complex and requires, let's say, a level of deliberation, right? But again, it may happen later on, right? Or before. Okay. So if we go to the next slide, that is slide 50, we will see that we have about another 3 or 4 different advances. Remember, 6 to 16 months, more or less. And here we have babbling that can be of two types: reduplicated babbling or non-reduplicated babbling. And we can have one-word utterance, right? So same thing, same observation. It may happen first one, then the other, etc. Right? So what is babbling? Well, basically that one. Now practice articulate movement and learn to produce the prosody. Yes. So basically, even though they of course don't have the conceptual notion of what is a syllable, the babbling is that the repetition of somehow. Or at least the possibility of producing, we're going to call it syllables, yes, of somehow combination of utterances or phonetic emissions. So we can listen during this time a lot of these different sounds, and as I mentioned before, let's say the purpose is to practice the articulate movement. Yes, this babbling is normally let's say senseless. It doesn't have a meaning. Yes, and that is why we say, for example, that somebody is babbling when he's in the middle of an explanation or a presentation and he says nothing or you cannot understand it. So you say, oh, está balbuceando, right? Or he's babbling in English. Because of that, because there's, let's say, a lot of some movement of the mouth, but it doesn't necessarily have a particular meaning. You see, there is like an advance of the previous stage in which we had this sucking and swallowing and burping, yes, or the cooing, but now the guy is modulating, yes, he's moving in a more conscious way, and eventually that is going to help him or her to develop closer meanings, right? We can have two types of babbling. The first one that is reduplicated babbling, and it is exactly that. The syllable repeats, ba ba ba, ma ma ma, da da da. So it may be only two, ba ba, ma ma, right? There's at least a repetition. Now, mama, of course, sounds really close to mother, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's about her. It may be with any sort of syllable, and that will be it, right? Or we have the possibility of having non-reduplicated babbling, yes? And it's when we have repetitions, utterances of syllables, but they do not repeat, yes? Like the one, baragi, or any of these different initials, but it is not a repetition, yes? Let's say that is a little bit more complex, yeah? So normally we have first reduplicated babbling, and then non-reduplicated, but again, this is not an exact science, right? And there's this one that is the first actual evidence or clue of meaning, yes, and it's the one-word utterance, yes. This will be the first sign of comprehension, the first evidence that the kid is having some sort of association, yes? So we are going to have associations between situations and strings of sounds, yes? Names of objects, actions or motions, right? There's a movement, there's something that fell down, there's his bottle, his let's say the implement that they used to feed him, all these different things. So the kid is able to produce a word and associate it with that something. Okay. Now attention. Normally, the word is not necessarily the correct word for that option. Yes. So it's pretty common that in Spanish they say they teach the kid to say el guau guau. Yes. To talk about the dog, and that is not even the word is not even remotely similar to the word dog. And even if you're trying to imitate the sound of the dog, think it like coldly, and you will see that guau guau has nothing to do with the actual sound that a dog produces. Yes. And well, this will be nice to talk about someday, or maybe you can talk about it in some other class, and how the onomatopoeias for the sounds of animals are different in each country, right? So here we have guau guau, but how is it in English? Yes, and here we say kikiriki for the hens, or for the rooster, sorry, but well, it is completely different in Japanese or in French or something like that, right? So my point over here by telling you this is that normally the first that happens is that the kid pronounces any particular word and associates it with a situation, right? But it doesn't need to be the actual name of it. Yes, the boy can say, I don't know, dodo, and it is the TV. Yes, he can say Baba, and it may be one of his favorite toys, right? It doesn't require to be a complete association, right? And I guess that you, the ones that have been close to infants, know that there are certain translations that you're required to do. Yes, so when there's like an external person, external to the house, I mean, and you normally explain it. Oh, when he says Baba, he means the blanket, for example, right, or whatever. So sometimes these words are similar to the actual word, or are a mispronunciation of the actual word, or simply sometimes they are something completely different, right? Not even the same initial, not the same length, or something like that. Okay. So normally these one word utterances are like that, still nonsensical in terms of the word that is pronounced, but very meaningful in terms of the association of one thing versus the other. Or, if the kid is really advanced, so he can actually say the word. Yes, I don't know, papa, toy, chicken, whatever, right? But it doesn't mean that he's also like super gifted or something like that. Okay. Very well. So those are like the three different things that we have in this period, or in this stage. Let's finish with this one that goes from 17 to 36 months and on, right? That it's a little bit of what we have over here. And here we have a lot of different phenomena that may happen, such as the vocabulary bursts, two-word utterances, morphosyntactic burst, and telegraphic speech, right? So let's discuss each one of them. First of all, we have a vocabulary burst. So we are going to, in these months, the kid is expected to have a huge development in the amount of words or sounds that he can associate to an idea. So just like in the previous stage, in which I mentioned the baba for blanket, or any of those, well, here we're going to have a lot of those associations, and they start getting more and more accurate. Yes, they start being pronounced in the, let's say, the closer ways, or sometimes perfectly, exactly the way the word is supposed to be said. So we have a huge amount of development in terms of vocabulary over here. Now we have over here two-word utterances, so combined expressions with semantic relationships. So these two-word things, it is like the germ of sentences, right? So usually the kid may have two words together that he pronounces or she pronounces when he wants something, when he wants to communicate anything, and that's it. Yes. Sometimes it may be a noun and another noun. Yes, two nouns over there, and let's say that you interpret that the kid wants either the relationship between one and the other, or wants both things, or something like that. Or sometimes, in a little bit more advanced connotation, it may be noun and verb, right? So that is almost a sentence, right? So this may happen over here. As I mentioned, this is like the initiation or the introduction to sentences, to full sentences. Then we have something that is the morphosyntactic burst, and it is the capacity of differentiation and using inflections, right? This is really advanced. What are the inflections? Well, the way in which I can conjugate verbs in the let's say languages that allow that, such as Spanish, or for example, if we're talking about English, inflections such as the S on the third person. Yes, we can also talk about differentiation between the use of nouns, he, she, they, even if they don't say the pronouns as well, at least the evidence of the idea, Also a possibility of differentiation between singular and plural. Yes, so this is the morphosyntactic burst. Eventually we are going to arrive at this telegraphic speech. It is telegraphic because it is the way in which telegraphs were supposed to transmit messages, like without verbs, or sometimes without certain articles, so, well, different things, right? Hopefully you get the idea. Well, these are, let's say, vestigial also sentences, but are much more elaborate than the two-word utterances, right? We have an example over here that says, milk all gone. What is the translation of this? The milk is all gone. I have run out of milk. I want more. I need to eat. Yes, I am hungry. So all of this is transmitted by this telegraphic sentence. Yes, it has just nouns over there. There's like the verb in the end, but that's a little bit what we have in there. So after a kid has reached this stage of telegraphic speech, let's say that he has reached the possibility of very soon, very let's say at an early age, he's going at an early point, he is going to be able to say complete sentences and communicate, let's say, normally with people, and of course start being able to make complex things and being able to make some other ideas related to it. Okay, but well, guys, so that was it. Those are most of the stages. We're going to have a, let's say, an amplification, is it? I guess. Yes, we're going to amplify a little bit these ideas in the next video that will be quite short, but I would say that this video is like the most important one, so you can carry out your observation and develop certain things, and see how you can develop your final project. Okay, so I hope it was useful. Thank you very much. See you in the next video. Bye bye.